What is up, everybody? We are back with our team reviews, our last four teams before we finish this kind of a long project up, going through every single team in the NFL, kind of previewing fantasy-wise what we think the outlook for them are. It is August 23rd, so we're still a couple weeks away from the season starting, so a lot can change. Injuries, last preseason week is coming up, which I don't know how many fantasy relevant players are going to be starting in terms of the starters, but we are talking about the Seattle Seahawks in today's video. Dad, Seahawks, interesting team this year. A lot of people were down on them going into last year, and that's not the case this year.
Yeah, that's for sure. No one thought going into this time last year, it was kind of thumbs down on the Seahawks. So, based upon their quarterback situation and stuff like that. And even the preseason was kind of weird last year. And but Geno Smith came out of it, and the team's got a real identity, and they have some very good fantasy assets, I would say.
Yeah, I would say it was around this time last year that maybe we learned that Geno was the starter going into the week 3. It wasn't. I think most people had their money on Drew Lock, to be honest.
I think he got hurt, or he got COVID, or
I think
something.
he got COVID, yeah, and that kind of messed up his preseason. He played week 1, didn't look great, and then got COVID, didn't get to play week 2, and that kind of led. I think Geno would have won out either way, but yeah. So and then you basically, because of that, we got bargains on everyone because everyone was afraid of the quarterback situation. So maybe the case this year. We'll see. We'll get into it again. Redraft football, redraft fantasy is what we're looking at. Half PPR is our rankings and our projections and averages and all that. And we'll throw in dynasty and stuff like that as well. Starting off with that quarterback, Geno Smith. Had a pretty awesome story, I'd say. For those that don't know, he was drafted by the Jets. I think like the first pick of the second round, or very early in the second round in 2013, so a long time ago. Played a couple years there. Didn't look great, as no one does with the New York Jets, and then was basically a backup from 2015 to 2021 with the Jets, with the Giants, with the Chargers, and even in Seattle behind Russell Wilson. And then he gets his shot, and he looked awesome. He threw for almost 4,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He led the league in completion percentage. He even gave you a rushing floor of about, under about 22 yards, rushing yards a game, 366 yards total. So Geno was pretty awesome last year. People that maybe just threw him on their bench or picked him up early in the waiver wire run, right around week 3-4, they got lucky because you got the QB5. And, QB5 last year averaged 18.5 points, which is good. That's kind of, you want at least 17.5 to 18 points from your quarterback. The difference makers average 25, 24 points, but you have to spend up for those guys. Anyways, Geno Smith, Dad, fine with him as your QB1 in a one quarterback league. He's going as the QB 15, so you can wait pretty, 9th, 10th round to take him if you want.
Yeah, I would. I think I would be okay. Who would have thought that the guy, would have? I remember his first years with, he started as a rookie, and he didn't look very good, and and he was kind of the clipboard guy, collecting a backup paycheck and stuff like that, and no one would have thought. It's always cool to see guys who kind of what do you want to call it, betting on themselves a little bit, and he hung around and obviously paid attention, and I think I would be okay, comfortable. Geez, if he could replicate 30 touchdowns and 4,200 yards, I think I'd be happy.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I mean, again, what you want from your quarterbacks. Obviously, you want the high end scoring, and that Geno's not going to give you that. He's not going to run like Allen or Hurts or Fields or Lamar. He's not going to put up the huge passing numbers like Mahomes or Burrow do. But the point is, you're taking him. His average draft position is 114, and again, he's QB 15. So if you play in a 12-team league, that's essentially saying everyone has their quarterback at that point. So you can even maybe wait a little longer. Knowing you got to know your league. Do they take up backup quarterbacks as well, which some leagues do? But you could potentially wait longer. But the trade-off is, you're getting a guy that will average 18 and a half points. But you get to wait. You don't have to take a second-round pick. You don't have to use a second-round pick on a quarterback, where you can get a stud running back or receiver. So, I don't see why Geno can't replicate it. The moves they made have only benefited him. They brought in the best receiver in the draft. They brought in a good all-around running back as well. They kept their two other receivers that were there last year. I don't see what's going to change, really. I really don't. So I like Geno this year. He's a guy I'm targeting because that's my quarterback strategy, is to kind of get a later round quarterback. He's going right in that Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff range. One of those guys is kind of what I'm targeting. One of those five: Rodgers, Cousins, Jones, Geno, Jared Goff. I'm targeting one of those five in that 9th, 10th round. And I'm super happy with one of those. All those guys, I kind of put them in the same boat. And again, Geno does give you even a solid little rushing floor. 366 yards is again, it's not nothing. You take that over a 17-game season, that's 21 rushing yards a game. So that's every other game. He's basically giving you a touchdown worth of rushing yards. So he's giving you a solid little floor there, right? So important to know Drew Lock's name. He has looked good in preseason. Former first-round pick, kind of flamed out with the Broncos. People kind of thought he was going to be the starter for the Seahawks. Geno won the job, but he has looked good in preseason. I'll give him that. And it's just a name to know, just in case Geno was a one-year wonder and reverts back to what we thought he was. I don't think it's going to happen, but just in case, a name to know for sure. The running backs are an interesting situation. We have Kenneth Walker, who was a rookie last year, burst onto the scene once Rashad Penny inevitably got hurt. And the running backs are an interesting situation here. Kenneth Walker, rookie last year, burst onto the scene when Rashad Penny was hurt. And he ended up as the RB16 in half PPR. And I'm sure if you basically take out the first 4 weeks when he wasn't really getting much play because of Rashad Penny, he's probably closer to a top 12 running back. Issue is they drafted a running back in the second round in Zach Charbonnet, who was considered second, third best running back prospect in the draft. And that's kind of scared everyone. On top of that, Kenneth Walker was hurt for a lot of the preseason. So was Charbonnet, but he came back before Walker. So this is just kind of like you like to say, Dad, a little bit of a soup sandwich here of what do we do? It's nervous taking Kenneth Walker because as of now, Kenneth Walker's still going in the 4th round in drafts. And it's a little nervous because you need that guy to hit. You need your 4th rounder to hit in order to win. Dad, are you avoiding this whole situation? Are you targeting Charbonnet more, who's kind of going more in looks like the 9th round, 8th, 9th round?
Yeah, it's
way are you going?
It is kind of messy. You tend to think Seattle as a run-heavy team, and you go, yeah, they'll just be run-heavy. Then you look at their wide receivers, and you go, no, man, they're not going to be, run-heavy. So, I don't know. You can't, what do they call it, a stack or a handcuff or something like that? You get both these guys, but how in the hell do you know which one to play? So, so what's going to happen is they're going to roll with the hot hand. Who's that going to be? We don't know. You could say you like the new guy, Charbonnet. I've seen him play a little bit in the preseason. He looks pretty good. I'm sure Kenneth Walker would look okay if he was playing. He had a groin issue, I think it was, but geez, I don't know. What do? I guess you ignore it or something, or you avoid it, I guess, and just say, well, something's going to happen here, and I don't know what it is, and good luck to the guy who picked right, guy or gal who picked right.
Yeah, this is a tough one for sure. I like Kenneth Walker. I think he's really, really talented, and there's a chance that we're just overthinking it, and the Seattle just took the approach of best player available type of approach, which a lot of NFL teams do, by the way. They don't necessarily draft, we need this or we have this, we're not going to draft this guy. They go best player available. This guy's the best player. I mean, New England used to do it all the time with quarterbacks and Tom Brady. They had Tom Brady for however long they had him, and they would take quarterbacks in the second, third round. And you think, why are you doing that? And they just kind of took the approach of this is the best player we think is on the board. So there is that. Yeah, it is so tough. I'm not going to blame anyone that just wants to avoid it in the fourth round. Maybe if he's there in the fifth, late fifth, early sixth round, you take that, you feel a little more comfortable. But I mean, you just kind of look at the running backs going around him, and the situation seemed a little more clear. Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders. Those situations feel a lot more clear than this one. And those are all the running backs going around them. So I don't blame you if you want to wait. I think there's upside there. Kenneth Walker, think about this. If Zach Charbonnet is not there, where's Kenneth Walker going? Second round? He's going pretty high, right? I would assume, Dad. I mean, if there's no Charbonnet.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going up there with the Jacobs, the Najee Harrises, the Ramondre Stevensons, the ETNs. He's going late second, early third round. So if you think about it from that point of view, and you're saying, well, what if Charbonnet's not really a thing and I'm getting a discount? Then you could kind of win your league in that sense. You're getting kind of a league-winning player. But yeah, couple things I want to say. I actually made a video about this. It was actually, I think, one of our most successful videos, but it was looking at when teams have drafted a running back in the first or second round when there was already kind of established guy there. And this is from 2010. And there was several cases of this. And I don't think there was any case of the rookie really making an impact. You can go back and watch that video. It's called the Seattle Conundrum or something. And a couple of those have happened under Seattle and Pete Carroll. One of them was Christine Michael was drafted. If you guys remember him in 2013, Christine Michael was drafted by Seattle when Marshawn Lynch was already there. He was drafted in the second round, by the way. He was a second round pick. Christine Michael did nothing really his whole career, but even that rookie year. Another one was Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny was a first round pick, and Rashad Penny had in his first year, he had 85 carries and 9 catches. And you might be thinking, well, he was hurt. He played in 14 games, so he wasn't that hurt. He missed 2 games that year. That was his only year where he wasn't hurt. He had 85 carries. He was a first-round pick, and they went with Chris Carson, who was an undrafted guy, or a 7th-round pick maybe. They went with Chris Carson. So, and then last year, you even look at last year, and you look at, again, Kenneth Walker, drafted in the second round. Rashad Penny was, the first 4 weeks, was doubling the amount of carries that Kenneth Walker had. Kenneth Walker was not a thing the first 4 weeks because of Rashad Penny. So, again, you look at it. I'm looking at his game log from his first 4 weeks. He was inactive week 1, 4 carries, 3 carries, 8 carries, 8 carries. Kenneth Walker was not a thing. So this leads me to maybe favor Kenneth Walker a little bit. we've seen it with Seattle. 3 examples with Seattle where they go with the guy that was there last year that was established. So
I think the uniqueness of this situation is this: we're talking about a second-year guy and a first-year guy, and they both drafted in the second round. So that's some of those other situations. Those guys were probably drafted a little bit later or something like that. I don't know off the top of my head, but these 2 guys are really good running backs. So they had really good college careers. So I mean, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, the one situation to look at is the Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. Chris Carson was a second-year guy when Rashad Penny was drafted, and Chris Carson didn't do anything his rookie year. So no one had any idea about Chris Carson. Everyone thought it was Rashad Penny because Chris Carson had 200 yards rushing his rookie year, played in 4 games. And then they drafted Rashad Penny in the first round, and you think, they must go towards – nope, they went Chris Carson and kind of a guy out of nowhere. So, yeah, I get what you mean. Like Marshawn Lynch was well established. Rashad Penny last year was a 4-year veteran, whereas this year it's not like that. I don't know. It's really tough. I will say this: the one area in which Kenneth Walker struggled. There's 2 areas in which he struggled with. One was short yardage. He had like some of the most. I forget the exact numbers, but he had. Almost led the league, I think, in like goal line carries, or he was in the top 5 in like goal line carries in short yardage situations on 3rd and 4th and 1. And he was horrible in those situations. Like absolutely, like he had so many negative yardage runs and he was absolutely horrible. I think he had like 10 red zone goal line carries and had like 2 touchdowns or something. So there's that. And then pass protection was another one. And as a pass catcher in general, isn't necessarily the most talented guy. So if there's an area in which Charbonnet makes a difference, it could be in the pass catching and the goal line. And that's where you get worried because it's like Kenneth Walker's between the 20s, Charbonnet's getting the catches and the touchdowns. And now you're kind of like, well, damn, what do I do now? Right? Yeah, this is tough. This is really tough. I'm probably a little bit more in on Charbonnet. That potential of like, hey, maybe he's just the better back and you can get him in round 8 or 9. Are you kind of in agreement with that, Dad? Like, kind of more in on Charbonnet in the 9th, 10th round?
Yeah, I kind of said before, I always like the new guy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a wise decision. So everybody likes new guys and stuff like that. So, Charbonnet though has all the tools. He had a good college career and stuff like that. So does Kenneth Walker though. Jeez.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Kenneth Walker, I just look at his numbers, and you said he barely even played. This is what made me look at his numbers. The first 3 or 4 weeks. Is that?
Yeah. So he was inactive week 1. Weeks 2 to 4, he had 60 yards rushing those 3 weeks combined. And so then week 5, I think, is when Penny got hurt and then Charbonnet started to take off. So, yeah.
Walker, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, Walker.
Yeah, no. He had over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 228 carries. Caught the ball 27 times. So most of that was in 13 weeks. So good portion of it. So
yeah, and he missed another game in week 14. So yeah, basically 12 games he put up 1,000 yards rushing. 12 games he had 992 yards rushing. Yeah.
Makes it hard.
It does, because he is good. He's explosive. He can take a 60-yard. I don't think Charbonnet is as explosive. Kenneth Walker can take a 60-yard touchdown and take it to the house. It's going to be – this is one of those, man, like if you take the risk and you hit on Walker and Walker is just the guy, you're going to be loving life because you're getting a top 12 running back in the fourth round, which is you don't get those type of guys generally. But you're also taking a big risk. So it could be a situation where Seattle's like, look, we want to make sure we have two good running backs, and if one of them gets hurt, we basically don't want to miss a beat. It could be a situation like that. I don't know. This is so tough. So I'll probably be a little bit more in on Charbonnet. The receivers, I think, are a little more clear, especially with the recent news, I would say. But anyways, we have DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 1 here. Maybe it should be Tyler Lockett because Tyler Lockett has outscored DK Metcalf basically every year they played together except for 2020, I believe. 3 of the 4 years, it's actually been Lockett who's been the better fantasy guy. And you get Lockett at a value every single year. Everyone doubts him, and he just keeps producing and outproduces his ADP every single year. DK Metcalf is interesting because I would say he had a really good rookie year, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. It's really good. And then he exploded in 2020. And I would say by like week 6 of 7 of 2020, dynasty-wise, he was probably the wide receiver 1 because he was just exploding. He had the first 9 weeks of the 2020 season, he had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. And basically from then on, he's never lived up to that potential. I know Russ got hurt, I believe, in 2020, but from weeks 10 to 17, he had 500 yards in 8 games. And then not last year, but in 2021, he had 75 catches, 967 yards, 12 touchdowns. So good year, but not like what you were expecting, like potential wide receiver 1 stuff. And then last year, 90 catches, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Again, good year, but not like it just feels like he's not maybe what we expected him in the middle of 2020 to be. Dad, how do you feel about DK Metcalf in general? I'll tell you here in a second. You can, if you want him, you have to draft him in the 3rd round as a wide receiver 15. Are you okay with that?
Well, first off, I think we expect him to be like Jefferson or Kupp or Chase or something like that. We just look at this guy, this physical specimen, and we expect, a lot more out of him and stuff like that, I guess. Or we're kind of waiting for a huge explosion, and we're kind of getting a firecracker going off or something. I mean, that's kind of crazy to say that a guy caught 90 passes last year, and but he's less than 12 yards per catch, so it's coming down a little bit. They paid him, so he's not pissed off about his contract and stuff like that. So I guess what do we expect out of him? Just what we got last year: 90 catches, 1,048 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's what I would expect. Is that worthy of a 3rd rounder? I'd say so.
Yeah.
He plays every game just about. So, he gets targeted a lot. So, I mean, the reliability is there. You might not have these great numbers, but if he's your wide receiver 2 and you've already got some other premium receiver, I'd say you're pretty good,
Yeah, I generally agree. And this year, wide receivers are being pushed up. So, like the wide receiver 15, maybe in past years, is closer to like a 4th round pick. This year, it's more like a 3rd round pick. So, yeah, like, am I taking him over like a T. Higgins or Calvin Ridley, Deebo Samuel? Probably. I mean, I'd think about it with like a Deebo or something, but am I taking him over Amari Cooper? Yeah, I'm taking him over Amari Cooper. It's interesting. He only had 6 touchdowns last year, which you look at his 2 previous years, he was double digits. it wasn't like he wasn't being targeted last year in the red zone. He had the second most targets in the red zone last year. He just that didn't translate very well to touchdowns. So you expect a little bit more, as they say, positive regression in that area, basically getting more touchdowns, going back to closer to a double-digit guy. And basically, if he can do what he did last year and score, even if it's 3 more touchdowns, we're looking at a guy that's closer to a top 12 guy in terms of points. You're right about him never missing game. He's never missed a game in his career. He's never missed a game. He started all but one game in his career. So yeah, the guy is as reliable as they come. And so is the next guy in Tyler Lockett. You look at him; he's the poster boy for. He gets the ball and he does not take hits. He dives to the ground when he's about to take a hit because he's like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get hit. Tyler Lockett has only missed 1 game in his entire career since 2015. He's missed. Oh no, it looks like he's missed. I forgot we have 17 games now. So it looks like he's missed 3 games in his career. Maybe they just sat him out. I don't know, but he's missed 3 games. He's had 1,000 yards 4 straight years. He's had 8 or more touchdowns 5 straight years, which I don't think people realize. And the last 4 years, he's had at least 75 catches, 73 in 2021. And he constantly outproduces his ADP because people just don't think he's going to live up to it each and every year. Tyler Lockett, kind of again, he's being drafted in the 6th round as the wide receiver 26. How do you feel about Tyler Lockett, who was the wide receiver 13 last year? It was like basically been a top 15 wide receiver 4 straight years, but you can get him as the wide receiver 26. How you feeling about Lockett?
Yeah, I don't know. You get these weird vibes out of Tyler Lockett, and then you look at his stats and you go, holy crap. Holy shit, how'd this guy do all this? And I know some of his, if you look at some of his game logs, he has some huge games that I don't want to say they pad his stats or something like that, but I wish he was a little more consistent on what he did per week instead of having these huge weeks, you get 30 points or something like that, and kind of wish you were getting about 15 points a week. But now people are thinking like, well, geez, they drafted his replacement, JSN and and all that other stuff. But I still think he's going to produce. What's he going to? I think it's the last year of his contract. So I think he's going to produce. You just look at those numbers that he puts up. 1,000 yards. I see no reason. There was no drop off between Russell Wilson and Geno Smith. So this guy's he's still going to get well over 100 targets, and away we go.
Yeah. He was a little more consistent last year than his previous years. He was a little bit more boom bust. He was a little more consistent last year, I would say. Maybe it looks like 2 games where he killed you, or 3 games where he killed you, and then the rest he was good. So, but yeah, it is tough with Lockett. Like, for whatever reason, there's like this mental block of like, no, Tyler Lockett's not. He's getting up there in age. Got to acknowledge that he's going to be 31 basically at the beginning of the season, which is old for a receiver. But the guy's never missed games, really. He doesn't get a lot of injuries. So I'm fine with it. I don't know if I'm going to be targeting Lockett too much just because I have this mental block, but I'm not going to be surprised. If you look at it, end of the year, he's a top 15 receiver with 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like, that's just what he does. So maybe the hesitation is with the next guy we're going to talk about in Jackson Smith and Jigba. your first round pick, the top receiver prospect in this draft. I think JSN is awesome. I think he's really good. He outplayed Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson in college in 2021. He was the main guy for that Ohio State offense. I think his route running is amazing. Issue, he did break his wrist, I think it was. So he's potentially going to miss the beginning of the season. I don't think we have that confirmed yet. But he's definitely going to miss some time.
Is that what the injury is? A broken wrist?
I think it was a broken wrist, yeah.
I heard surgery on the wrist. And then I heard something stupid like, oh, well, they're still shooting for week 1. I'm going, nah, man, I don't know. I don't see surgery. For a wide receiver having surgery on your wrist and you're going to play in a couple weeks, that doesn't make sense. Something's not, I got bad information or somebody's bullshitting somebody. It just doesn't seem right. So
yeah.
So if he had a broken wrist, then that's a problem.
Yeah, it's broken wrist, surgery on it. They say 3 to 4 weeks. So we're 2 weeks away from the season starting. And there's no reason for them to rush him back. Like, they don't need him to start the year. They have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Like, they're fine. So yeah, I just count on JSN missing at least 2 weeks is kind of how I see it. I do think I think it's going to drop his ADP a bit, which is exciting for me because I'm thinking, okay, I can get a little bit more of a bargain for him. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 36, 88th overall. So that is round 8. And that's probably going to drop a half a round to a round. And I think when JSN comes back, even with these guys, I just think he's going to be so much better than he's just really, really good. And he's going to shine, I think, especially if one of these guys get hurt, which doesn't really happen with those good 2 guys. But Dad, are you taking JSN in your drafts, or are you kind of avoiding him because you have to spend still an 8th round pick on him?
Well, I think I'm avoiding him now. So, and it's not because of performance. It's just that there's probably other guys available, and I don't like drafting injured players and say, well, it depends on where I get them, I guess. So if he's my wide receiver 4 or 5 or something like that, which he's kind of too good to be in that position, but based upon a broken wrist now, I don't feel like sitting the guy, and you can't lose a week in fantasy football, because your season is 12, 13 weeks long. You got to play through all the buys and all the injuries and everything else. And here you got this guy sitting on your bench. Maybe you don't have room for him or something like that, but he's going to be back in October or something. If we hear that information, it's like, well, yeah, when he comes back, he's going to be good. So somebody's going to get a really good wide receiver here, if you can wait.
Yeah, I'm fine with waiting because again, you're drafting him as of now in the 8th round. Maybe he drops to the 9th now because of this injury, and so you just think about it. Even if you're a person who takes a quarterback and tight end high, okay, you take your quarterback, you take your tight end. That means you probably have 3 receivers at least. So he's probably your wide receiver 4 at best, maybe your wide receiver 5. I'm fine with that. Because I think he is really good, and I think he's going to make an impact later on in the season. So I'm fine if you don't want to draft him. If you want to take Jordan Addison or Gabe Davis or Brandon Cooks, who are the guys going around him, that's fine. But I do expect him to make a big impact on this team. I think it's really good for Geno Smith. I mean, you got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. You got Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I think it's really good. No one else to really talk about in the wide receiver room. Just those 3 guys. And then the tight end room, not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, Noah Fant is a good tight end for an NFL team. If you are a Seahawks fan, you should be fine with Noah Fant as your tight end. He's just a solid, reliable guy. Has never really lived up to the hype that people had of him. Super athletic. I believe he was a first-round pick, 20th overall. Never lived up to the hype. He had a couple top 12 seasons in 2020 and 2021 as a top 12 tight end. Seattle last year, I think he was more like a top 16 guy. It's just hard to see him really producing with these three guys ahead of him in Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN. But a name to keep an eye on because he is an athletic tight end and he's still only 25 years old. And so we've talked about it. It takes tight ends to kind of get. I wouldn't be surprised if he had like a David Njoku type of season where it's like, oh, after 5 years, you finally have a good season, because he is that athletic and he's still pretty young. So anything to say on Noah Fant, Dad? Are you interested at all?
Only if I'm forced to, I don't think he's a bad tight end, he's, my God, how many tight ends? There's so many tight ends that have around the 50, 60 catch mark, and he, he's right there. So if I need a second tight end or something like that, he's my guy.
Yeah. You don't have to be forced to take him. He's going as a tight end 33. So people are way out on him. People are saying there's a backup tight end that's better than him because he's going as tight end 33. So yeah, you don't have to be forced to take him. He's a waiver wire guy. So but other than that, we are done. Seattle Seahawks, interesting team. The running back situation, the wide receiver situation, I think it looks really good for Geno Smith. But yeah, we'll be back. We are going to be back. I forget which team off the top of my head now. I'm drawing a blank, but I think it's Tampa Bay, actually, with the Buccaneers. We'll be back with them. As always, if you like the video and subscribe.